A poor girl stumbles upon an abandoned car and hears banging coming from the trunk. When she opens it, she discovers a kidnapped millionaire on the brink of death. She helps him and disappears without saying her name, but leaves behind something impossible to ignore. The scar on her face is identical to that of the daughter he believed he had lost forever. The Seattle fog rolled in thick that morning, blanketing Riverdale salvage yard in an eerie, impenetrable mist. 10-year-old Lily Morgan pulled her worn jacket tighter around her small frame, her breath visible in the cold air as she navigated through the maze of discarded vehicles. Scavenging for anything valuable had become routine: copper wiring, aluminum, or even intact car parts that Mr. Jenkins might buy for a few dollars. Enough to help Grandma Martha with groceries this week. Lily's keen eyes scanned the junkyard methodically. She'd developed a sixth sense for finding treasures others overlooked, a necessity, since she and Grandma Martha had been struggling to make ends meet. Her gaze settled on an expensive-looking black sedan, partially hidden behind a stack of crushed cars. It seemed out of place among the rusted heaps. Maybe there's something good inside, she whispered to herself, approaching cautiously. The car's sleek lines suggested luxury, though it was now coated with a thin layer of dust. As she circled around to the trunk, a muffled sound stopped her cold. She froze, listening intently. There it was again, a weak thumping coming from inside the trunk. Heart hammering in her chest, Lily pressed her ear against the metal surface. The sound was unmistakable now. Someone was inside, their movements growing weaker by the minute. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling. "Is someone in there?" A faint groan answered her. Panicking, Lily looked around for something to pry open the trunk. She spotted a rusty crowbar nearby and, with determination beyond her years, wedged it into the seam of the trunk lid. It took all her strength, but eventually the lock gave way with a metallic pop. Inside, bound with duct tape and rope, lay a man in an expensive suit, his face bruised and pale. His eyes widened in disbelief at the sight of the young girl standing over him. "Help," he managed to whisper through cracked lips, his voice hoarse from dehydration. Without hesitation, Lily began working at his restraints, her small fingers struggling with the knots. "What happened to you?" she asked, fear evident in her voice. "Kidnapped," the man rasped, his eyes darting nervously toward the surrounding fog. "Business, partner. Please, hurry." As Lily freed his hands, the man struggled to sit up. His strength was clearly fading fast. "What's your name?" he asked weakly. "Lily," she replied, helping him remove the last of the tape from his ankles. The man's gaze focused on her face for the first time, and he froze, staring at her with an intensity that made Lily uncomfortable. His eyes fixed on a small crescent-shaped scar just below her right temple. "What's wrong?" Lily asked, suddenly self-conscious. He shook his head slightly as if dismissing an impossible thought. "Nothing. I'm Ethan Harrison." Lily recognized the name vaguely. She'd seen it on billboards around Seattle, something about computers or software. Before she could respond, the sound of approaching voices made them both stiffen. "You need to go," Ethan whispered urgently. "It's not safe. Go now." Lily hesitated, unwilling to leave the injured man. "Please," he begged. "I'll be okay. You've helped enough. Go." With one last concerned look, Lily disappeared into the fog just as a pair of truckers rounded the corner, drawn by the noise of the trunk opening. Ethan collapsed back, relief washing over him as the men rushed to his aid. "Jesus Christ, man! What happened to you?" one of them exclaimed, helping him out of the trunk. "Call 911, Ethan managed before slipping into unconsciousness. Hours later, in the sterile brightness of Seattle Memorial Hospital, Ethan awoke to the steady beep of monitors and the concerned face of Detective Mike Brennan. "Mr. Harrison, glad to see you're awake," the detective said, pulling a chair closer to the bed. "Can you tell me what happened?" Ethan's mind was foggy, the past few days a blur of fragmented memories. "I was taken from the parking garage at Harrison Tech. I remember a warehouse, voices discussing money, saying he wouldn't be a problem anymore. He struggled to organize his thoughts. They wanted me to sign over control of the company. When I refused," he trailed off, the memories of what followed still too raw. The beatings, the threats, the endless hours in darkness, waiting for a rescue that never came. "Any idea who was behind it?" Detective Brennan asked, scribbling notes. Ethan hesitated. I have suspicions. My CFO, Robert Caldwell, we've been at odds about selling the company to Globotech. He stands to make millions if the sale goes through, but I've been blocking it. We'll look into it, Brennan assured him. The truckers said they found you in an abandoned car at Riverdale Salvage. Any idea how you got there? A small face flashed in Ethan's memory. A young girl with determined eyes and a distinctive crescent scar. A face hauntingly familiar. A child, he said quietly. A little girl found me and freed me. Then she vanished. A girl? At the junkyard? Brennan looked skeptical. Did you get her name? Lily, Ethan replied, the name catching in his throat. His daughter's name had been Emma, not Lily, but the resemblance. It was impossible. We'll try to find her for a statement, Brennan said, rising to leave. In the meantime, get some rest. We'll have officers outside your room for protection. Left alone with his thoughts, Ethan couldn't shake the image of the girl's face. The same heart-shaped face, the same determined set of the jaw, and most strikingly, the identical crescent-shaped scar his daughter Emma had received when she fell from a swing at age 5. But Emma was gone, lost 2 years ago in that terrible storm when their car was swept off the bridge into the raging Snoqualmie River. Her body had never been recovered, despite weeks of searching. The official report had concluded she'd been carried out to the Sound by the floodwaters. Yet the girl in the junkyard, Lily, was her spitting image, down to the distinctive scar. It couldn't be a coincidence. The age seemed right too. Emma would be 10 now. As exhaustion pulled him back towards sleep, Ethan made a silent promise. Once he was discharged, he would find this girl again. He had to know who she was and where she came from. If there was even the slightest chance that Emma had somehow survived, the thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. For 2 years he'd been a shell of himself, going through the motions of living while his soul remained frozen in grief. Harrison Tech had become his only focus, a distraction from the empty mansion that no longer felt like home. Now, for the first time since the accident, Ethan felt something stir within him. Hope, dangerous and fragile, but hope nonetheless. Outside the hospital window, the Seattle skyline glittered through patches of clearing fog, the Space Needle illuminated against the night sky. Somewhere in that vast city was a little girl named Lily, with Emma's face and Emma's scar, who had saved his life and then disappeared back into the mist like a phantom. Ethan's fingers closed around the call button. He needed to get out of this hospital bed. He needed to find her before the trail went cold, before he lost his daughter, if it was truly her, for a second time. Nurse, he called as a woman in scrubs appeared in the doorway. I need to speak with my lawyer immediately. 3 days after his rescue, Ethan Harrison stood in the doorway of an untouched bedroom, his fingers tracing the polished wood frame. Emma's room remained exactly as she had left it on that fateful rainy night 2 years ago. Shelves lined with stuffed animals, science fair ribbons pinned to a corkboard, and star-patterned bedding neatly made by Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper who came twice weekly to dust and vacuum, preserving this shrine to his lost child. Ethan's footsteps were muffled by the plush carpet as he crossed to the dresser where a silver frame held Emma's last school photo. His daughter smiled back at him, gap-toothed and confident, her hair pulled back with the sparkly hair clip she'd insisted on wearing that day. The crescent scar visible by her temple, a permanent reminder of her playground fall. I saw you today, he whispered to the photograph. Or someone who could be your twin. Behind him, Martin Chen, his personal attorney and closest friend, waited patiently in the hallway. He'd driven Ethan home from the hospital against medical advice. You should be resting, Martin said gently. The police are handling the investigation. Robert's company access has been suspended, and his accounts are being monitored. Ethan turned away from the photograph. I didn't ask you here to discuss Robert or the company. He led Martin to his home office, where files were already spread across the mahogany desk. Accident reports, search and rescue documentation, newspaper clippings, the paper trail of a tragedy that had consumed 2 years of his life. What's all this? Martin asked, picking up the official accident report. Everything from the night Emma disappeared, Ethan replied, pulling out a chair. I need you to look at it with fresh eyes. Martin's expression softened with concern. Ethan, we've been through this. The current was too strong. The divers searched for weeks. The forensic experts concluded that her body was likely carried out to Puget Sound, Ethan finished. I know what they said. But what if they were wrong? What if she somehow survived? Ethan, Martin's voice was gentle but firm. This is about the girl who helped you, isn't it? The one at the junkyard. Ethan pulled out his phone and opened a photo app. This is Emma 2 years ago, he said, showing Martin the school portrait. Then he swiped to a second image, a grainy security camera still from Harrison Tech's facial recognition database, which he'd tasked with finding matches to Emma's features. And this is from a convenience store near Riverdale Salvage Yard, taken 3 days ago. Martin studied the images, his professional composure faltering. The resemblance is striking, he admitted. But Ethan, you know how grief works. We see what we want to see. It's not just the face, Ethan insisted. It's the scar. Identical placement, identical shape. What are the odds of that being a coincidence? Martin sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. Even if, and that's an enormous if, what are you suggesting? That Emma has been living as someone else for 2 years? That someone found her and didn't report it? That's a criminal offense. Or maybe someone found her and couldn't identify her, Ethan countered. The girl, Lily. She was with an elderly woman. What if Emma had amnesia from the accident? What if this woman found her and has been caring for her, not knowing who she really is? Martin's silence spoke volumes. His friend was humoring him, believing this to be the desperate theory of a traumatized mind. Ethan opened the wall safe behind a landscape painting and withdrew a small velvet box. Inside was a broken silver star pendant, Emma's favorite necklace recovered from the crashed car. I'm going back to that salvage yard, Ethan said with quiet determination. Every day if necessary until I find her again. And then what? Martin asked. You can't just accuse someone of harboring your missing daughter without proof. You need to let the police handle this. Ethan's laugh was hollow. The same police who gave up searching after 3 weeks? Who told me to find closure? No, I need to see her face to face. I need to know. Dawn found Ethan parked near the entrance to Riverdale Salvage Yard, a small cooler beside him containing bottled water and sandwiches. The morning fog was beginning to lift as the yard's owner arrived to unlock the gates. Morning, Ethan called, approaching with casual confidence. Mind if I take a look around? I'm interested in some parts for a restoration project. The grizzled owner, Jenkins, according to the name stitched on his coveralls, sized up Ethan's expensive coat and dubious expression. $50 for salvage rights. Find what you need, we'll negotiate price after. Ethan handed over a $100 bill. Keep the change. I might be back a few times this week. Jenkins pocketed the money without comment, gesturing toward the maze of junked vehicles. Ethan waited until the man retreated to his office before beginning his real search. For 3 hours, he wandered the labyrinthine paths between crushed cars and stacked engine blocks, seeing no sign of Lily. Eventually, he left the food and water near the black sedan where he'd been found, now just an empty shell with its trunk hanging open. A simple note accompanied the provisions. Thank you for saving my life. I'd like to help you too if you'll let me. I'll be back tomorrow. Ethan. He returned the next day. The food was gone, but there was no sign of the girl. He left more supplies and another note. On the third day, he found a small paper crane folded from his previous note, sitting atop the cooler. Progress. By the 5th day, his patience was rewarded. As he approached the now familiar meeting spot, a small figure darted between 2 stacked cars, observing him from a distance. Lily? He called softly. I just want to talk. The girl remained half-hidden, wary as a stray cat, but she didn't run. You've been leaving food, she said, her voice carrying clearly despite her obvious caution. Ethan nodded, keeping his distance. I wanted to thank you properly. Are you better now? She asked, edging slightly forward. In the clear morning light, the resemblance to Emma was even more striking. Same thoughtful eyes, same determined chin, same crescent scar. Much better thanks to you, he replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. You disappeared before I could properly thank you or repay you. Lily shrugged, embarrassment crossing her features. I didn't do it for money. I know, Ethan smiled. That makes it even more special. Most adults would have walked away. You didn't. His trained eye noted the details he'd missed in the fog and darkness of their first meeting. Her clothes were clean but worn. Her shoes at least a size too small with the laces double knotted to keep them secure. Despite obvious poverty, there was a dignity in how she carried herself. "My grandmother says we shouldn't expect rewards for doing the right thing," Lily said, chin lifting slightly. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman," Ethan replied. "I'd like to meet her someday." Wariness returned to Lily's expression. "Why?" "To thank her for raising such a brave girl," he said truthfully, then added, "and maybe to see if there's any way I can help you both, the way you helped me." Lily took another step forward, studying his face. "Are you really Ethan Harrison?" "From the billboards?" He nodded. "Harrison Technologies. That's my company." "Grandma Martha says rich people only help poor people when they want something in return," Lily said bluntly. The observation struck Ethan like a physical blow. It was exactly the kind of forthright statement Emma would have made. "Sometimes that's true," he acknowledged. "But sometimes people just want to do the right thing. Like you did." Their conversation was interrupted by a distant call. "Lily, where are you, child? We need to get going." Lily glanced over her shoulder. "That's Grandma. I have to go. Will you come back tomorrow?" Ethan asked, trying not to sound desperate. "I promise, I just want to talk." Lily hesitated, then nodded quickly. "I come here most mornings to find things to sell. Before school." "I'll be here," Ethan promised. "And Lily, thank you again. You saved my life." She offered a quick smile before disappearing into the maze of junked cars, leaving Ethan standing alone, his heart racing with a mixture of hope and terror. The girl was real. The resemblance was undeniable. And now he had a name, Grandma Martha, and the knowledge that they were struggling enough financially that a 10-year-old child was scavenging in junkyards before school. As he walked back to his car, Ethan pulled out his phone. "Martin, I found her. And it's her, Martin. I'd stake my life on it. I need you to do something for me. I need everything you can find on a woman named Martha, who's raising a granddaughter named Lily, living somewhere near Riverdale Salvage." The Greenwood Market buzzed with weekend shoppers, but Ethan's focus remained fixed on the small figure weaving between produce stands. Following Lily had been Martin's idea, not to frighten her, but to understand more about her life circumstances before making any official moves. Now, watching her carefully inspect bruised apples being sold at discount, Ethan felt a twist of emotion that was part hope, part guilt. Lily wore a backpack that seemed too heavy for her narrow shoulders as she selected the least damaged fruit, counting coins from a small cloth purse. Her careful deliberation over each purchase spoke volumes about her financial situation. When she finished shopping and headed toward the exit, Ethan made his move, timing his approach to appear coincidental. "Lily?" he called, feigning surprise. "I thought that was you." The girl turned, recognition flickering across her face. "Mr. Harrison?" she said, clutching her small bag of groceries closer. "Please call me Ethan," he smiled. "I didn't expect to see you here." Lily shifted uncomfortably. "I was just getting some things for Grandma Martha." Ethan gestured to the cafe section of the market. "I was about to have lunch. Would you like to join me?" "My treat, of course." Wariness crossed her features, but hunger won out. "I should call my grandmother first. She worries." "Of course," Ethan nodded, impressed by her caution. He watched as Lily used the market's courtesy phone, explaining in careful tones that she'd met the man from the junkyard and he'd offered to buy her lunch. After some back and forth, she nodded. "Okay, Grandma, I will. 2 hours, promise." "Everything all right?" Ethan asked when she returned. "She says it's okay, but I need to be home by 3, Lily replied, her eyes still evaluating him with a wisdom beyond her years. Over sandwiches and milkshakes, Ethan kept the conversation light, asking about school and her interests. Lily gradually relaxed, revealing a bright intelligence that made his heart ache with recognition. She loved science just like Emma had. Her favorite subject was astronomy, just like Emma's had been. "The stars make me feel peaceful," Lily explained, stirring her milkshake thoughtfully. "Like no matter what problems we have down here, they just keep shining." "My daughter felt exactly the same way," Ethan said softly. Lily looked up sharply. "You have a daughter?" Ethan hesitated, then reached for his wallet. "I had a daughter, Emma. She would be about your age now." He slid a photo across the table, the same school portrait from Emma's bedroom. Lily studied the picture, her expression unreadable. "What happened to her?" There was an accident, Ethan replied, carefully avoiding terms that might frighten her. 2 years ago, during that big storm, our car went off a bridge. I survived, but Emma was never found. I'm sorry, Lily said, pushing the photo back toward him. That must be really hard. It is, Ethan agreed, noticing how she'd avoided looking too closely at the image. But recently I've had reason to hope that miracles might be possible. Lily fidgeted with her straw wrapper. Why are you telling me this? Because when I first saw you in that junkyard, I thought I was seeing a ghost, Ethan admitted. You look remarkably like Emma. You even have the same scar. Lily's hand unconsciously touched the crescent mark near her temple. Lots of people have scars. Of course, Ethan nodded, backing off slightly. It was just startling. He changed the subject, asking about her grandmother. Lily's expression brightened as she described Martha Wilson, 72 years old, former elementary school teacher, who'd been raising Lily since as long as I can remember. The inconsistency wasn't lost on Ethan, but he didn't press. Where do you and your grandmother live? He asked casually. Lily's guard instantly returned. Near the bridge, she said vaguely. We have to move around sometimes. That must be difficult, Ethan said, keeping his tone neutral. Lily shrugged with practiced nonchalance. Grandma says home is where we're together, not a place. The sentiment struck Ethan deeply. It was something he'd lost sight of after Emma disappeared. The understanding that a house, no matter how grand, wasn't a home without loved ones. Your grandmother sounds like a remarkable woman, he said sincerely. I'd very much like to meet her. Lily studied him for a long moment, as if making a difficult decision. Maybe you can, she finally said. She needs help with her medicine sometimes, but she's too proud to ask. Would she accept help from me, do you think? Ethan asked. Lily twisted her paper napkin. Maybe if you didn't make it feel like charity. Grandma has a lot of dignity. I understand that completely, Ethan assured her. Perhaps I could offer a fair exchange. There must be something I could do that would allow her to maintain her pride. By the time they finished lunch, Lily had agreed to introduce him to Martha that afternoon. As they walked toward the Fremont Bridge, Ethan's lawyer instilled caution warred with his desperate hope. What if this was all coincidence? What if Martha was indeed Lily's biological grandmother? What if his certainty was nothing more than the delusion of a grieving father? The encampment under the bridge consisted of a patchwork of tents and makeshift shelters, evidence of Seattle's growing housing crisis. Lily led him directly to a small blue tent set slightly apart from the others, remarkably neat, despite its humble nature. Grandma, Lily called. I brought him. The man I told you about. Martha Wilson emerged from the tent, and Ethan's first impression was of dignity personified. Despite her circumstances, the elderly woman stood straight-backed, her white hair neatly pinned, wearing clean, though mended clothes. Her sharp eyes assessed Ethan with undisguised suspicion. Mr. Harrison, she said, extending a weathered hand, Lily tells me you've been leaving food for her at the salvage yard. I'm not sure whether to thank you or scold you for encouraging her to speak with strangers. Ethan shook her hand, noting the strength in her grip. I understand your caution, Mrs. Wilson. I'd feel the same in your position, but I owe Lily my life, and I'd like to repay that debt if you'll allow me. Martha gestured to a pair of folding chairs outside the tent. Let's sit and discuss exactly what you have in mind. For the next hour, Ethan outlined a proposal. Not charity, but an arrangement. A small apartment in Ballard, paid education expenses for Lily, and basic necessities in exchange for Martha's commitment to ensuring Lily attended school regularly. He was careful to frame it as an investment in Lily's future, rather than a handout. Why? Martha asked bluntly when he finished. Why would a man of your resources take such interest in a homeless child and an old woman? The question hung between them. Ethan had prepared for this, but now faced with Martha's piercing gaze, the rehearsed answers felt hollow. The truth is, he began slowly, Lily reminds me very much of my daughter, who disappeared 2 years ago. The resemblance is extraordinary. Martha's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Caution, perhaps, or recognition. Many children share similar features, she said carefully. They do, Ethan agreed, but not identical scars in identical locations. Martha's hands folded tightly in her lap. What exactly are you suggesting, Mr. Harrison? I'm not suggesting anything yet. Ethan replied honestly. I'm simply asking for the opportunity to help you both, while I try to understand why a child who looks exactly like my lost daughter appeared precisely when I needed saving. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it's something more. Martha studied him for a long moment before speaking. We've been offered help before, Mr. Harrison. It usually comes with strings I'm not willing to accept. The only condition is Lily's education, Ethan assured her. Everything else, at where you live, how you live, your independence, remains entirely your choice. And if we accept and later wish to leave, the first month's rent and deposit would be in your name, Ethan explained. You'd be free to stay or go as you choose. I'm not trying to trap you, Mrs. Wilson. I'm trying to honor what Lily did for me. Martha glanced at her granddaughter, who had been silently following the conversation with intense focus. What do you think, child? You're the one who found this man. Do you trust him? Lily considered the question seriously. He seems different from other rich people. He listens when I talk like you do. And he looks sad even when he's smiling. The simple observation caught Ethan off guard. It was exactly the kind of perceptive comment Emma would have made. Martha nodded slowly. Mr. Harrison, we accept your offer conditionally. 1 month. If at any point I feel Lily's welfare is compromised, we leave without discussion. Is that understood? Completely, Ethan agreed, relief flooding through him. I've taken the liberty of viewing an apartment this morning. If it meets with your approval, you could move in today. 2 hours later, Ethan watched as Martha and Lily explored the modest 2-bedroom apartment in a well-maintained building near a good public school. It wasn't luxury. That would have insulted Martha's pride. But it was clean, safe and furnished with the basics. This bedroom would be yours. Lily, Ethan said, opening a door to reveal a simple room with a twin bed, desk and empty bookshelf. We can get whatever else you might need tomorrow. Lily entered cautiously, her fingers trailing over the desk surface as if she couldn't believe it was real. My own room, she whispered, turning to her grandmother. Grandma, look, there's a real bed. Martha stood in the doorway, emotion briefly overtaking her stoic expression. It's very nice, Lily. While Lily explored the rest of the apartment, Martha pulled Ethan aside. I need to be clear about something, Mr. Harrison. Whatever you might believe about Lily's identity, she is my granddaughter in every way that matters. I've raised her, loved her, protected her. That bond is not negotiable. I understand, Ethan replied solemnly, and I respect it completely. As he left them to settle in, promising to return the next day with groceries and school enrollment papers, Ethan felt a conflicting mixture of hope and uncertainty. He had found them, gained their trust, and secured their immediate future. But the questions remained. Was Lily truly Emma? And if so, how had she come to be living as Martha Wilson's granddaughter? 3 weeks had transformed the small Ballard apartment in ways Ethan couldn't have anticipated. Curtains now framed the windows, a colorful rug brightened the living room, and carefully tended plants occupied the windowsills. But the most remarkable changes were in Lily and Martha themselves. Lily had gained weight, her formerly hollow cheeks now filled out, her eyes brighter. With proper nutrition and regular meals, she'd blossomed. Enrolled in the neighborhood elementary school, she'd quickly impressed her teachers with her intelligence and eagerness to learn, despite gaps in her education from years of transient living. Martha, too, seemed transformed, the constant tension in her posture gradually easing as their precarious existence stabilized. Though still fiercely independent, she had accepted Ethan's assistance with increasing grace, particularly regarding Lily's education and healthcare. Today, Ethan arrived at their apartment with a backpack full of books on astronomy, Lily's passionate interest, and a bag of pastries from the French bakery down the street. Martha answered his knock, wearing an apron over her neatly pressed clothes. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison," she greeted him, stepping aside to let him enter. Over the weeks, their relationship had evolved into a tentative mutual respect, though Martha maintained a careful formality that Ethan hadn't yet breached. "Mrs. Wilson," he nodded, handing her the bakery bag. "Croissants from Café Besalu. I thought they might make a nice breakfast treat." "How thoughtful," Martha said, accepting the offering. "Lily will be thrilled. She's just finishing her science project." Ethan followed Martha to the small dining table, where Lily sat surrounded by colored paper, scissors and glue, constructing what appeared to be a model of the solar system. She looked up at his arrival, her face breaking into an unguarded smile that made his heart clench with its familiarity. "Ethan, look what I'm making for the science fair," she exclaimed, holding up a partially completed model. "Mrs. Parker says I might win a ribbon if I get all the planetary distances to scale." "It's looking fantastic," Ethan said, setting the backpack on an empty chair. "And I brought something that might help. Some books on astronomy I thought you might enjoy." Lily's eyes widened as she pulled out the volumes, particularly a large atlas of the night sky with detailed constellation maps. "These are amazing," she breathed, running her fingers over the glossy pages. "Thank you." Martha watched their interaction with a complex expression, part gratitude, part wariness. "Lily, why don't you wash up while I set the table for breakfast? You can show Ethan your project afterward." While Lily was out of the room, Martha turned to Ethan. "You're being very generous with her," she observed. "The tutoring, the books, the doctor's appointments. I worry about what happens when your curiosity is satisfied." Ethan met her gaze directly. "This isn't about curiosity, Mrs. Wilson. Regardless of who Lily is or isn't, she deserves every opportunity to thrive. That won't change." Martha nodded slowly, seemingly satisfied with his answer. "She's having those dreams again," she said quietly. About water filling a car, screaming for someone to help her. Ethan's breath caught. "Has she always had these dreams?" "Since I found her," Martha admitted. "But they're becoming more frequent since we met you. Last night she woke up asking for someone named Daddy before she was fully awake." Before Ethan could respond, Lily returned, and Martha smoothly changed the subject, serving breakfast while asking about the science project. Ethan participated in the conversation mechanically, his mind racing with implications of what Martha had revealed. After breakfast, his phone buzzed with a text from Detective Brennan. "Need to speak with you. New developments in your case. Office at 2 p.m. I'm afraid I need to cut our visit short," Ethan apologized. "Work matter that can't wait. But I'll be back for dinner as planned, if that's still all right." Martha nodded. "We'll expect you at 6. Lily's been looking forward to showing you her first math test results." Outside in his car, Ethan called Martin. "I need you to meet me at the police station. Brennan has new information about the kidnapping." Hours later, Ethan sat across from Detective Brennan in an austere interview room, Martin beside him as both attorney and friend. Brennan pushed a folder across the table. "We found the warehouse where you were held," Brennan began without preamble. "Industrial area south of Georgetown. Crime scene team found traces of blood that match yours, and fibers from the clothes you were wearing when you were found." Ethan opened the folder to see photographs of a grimy concrete floor, walls with peeling paint, and a metal chair with restraints still attached. Fragmented memories surfaced. The smell of motor oil, voices arguing in an adjoining room, the sound of rain on a metal roof. "Any suspects?" Martin asked. Brennan's expression tightened. "We found fingerprints belonging to James Mercer, former security contractor for Harrison Tech. He's disappeared, but his last known location was a budget motel where we found this." He slid another photo across the table, a button from a custom suit, engraved with the logo of an exclusive Seattle tailor. "That's Robert's tailor," Ethan said immediately. "He has his suits custom made there. All the buttons have that engraving." "We thought so," Brennan nodded. "Financial records show Mercer received a wire transfer of $50,000 from an offshore account 3 days before your kidnapping. We're still tracing it, but the preliminary evidence suggests it's connected to Caldwell." "Is it enough for an arrest?" Ethan asked, hope rising. "Not yet," Brennan admitted. "We need more concrete evidence linking Caldwell directly to the kidnapping. The button and money transfer are circumstantial. We're working on flipping Mercer when we find him." As they left the station, Martin turned to Ethan. "This is good news. They're building a solid case. It's just a matter of time." Ethan nodded absently, his thoughts already returning to Martha's revelation about Lily's dreams. "I need to make a stop before dinner with Lily and Martha," he said. "Can you drive me to Snoqualmie Falls?" Martin gave him a sharp look. "The accident site? Ethan, are you sure that's wise?" "I need to see it again," Ethan insisted. "Please, Martin." An hour later, they stood at the viewing platform overlooking the falls and the gorge below. The memory of that night returned with visceral force. The storm's fury, the road washing out beneath their tires, the sickening moment of freefall before the impact with the swollen river. Ethan had managed to free himself from the sinking car, but Emma's seatbelt had been jammed. His last memory before losing consciousness was of her terrified face as water filled the vehicle. The current would have carried her downstream, Ethan said, pointing to the churning river below. If she somehow got free and reached the shore, she could have been found miles downriver, possibly near where Martha said she found Lily. Martin shook his head. There's still such a long shot, Ethan. The water was freezing, the current deadly strong. And if Martha found her, why wouldn't she report it? Perhaps she tried, Ethan suggested. Or perhaps she was afraid of losing her. An elderly homeless woman with no documentation, finding an injured child. She might have feared the authorities would separate them. You're building a narrative based on hope, not evidence, Martin cautioned. I'm worried about what happens when I find out Lily isn't Emma, Ethan finished. I've considered that possibility. And if that's the case, I'll still ensure they're both taken care of. But I need to know, Martin. I can't rest until I do. Back in Seattle, Ethan arrived at the Ballard apartment precisely at 6, bearing flowers for Martha and a small telescope for Lily. A reward for what he suspected would be excellent math test results. The evening progressed pleasantly, with Lily proudly displaying her A+ test and chatting excitedly about her science project. After dinner, while Lily worked on homework in her room, Ethan helped Martha with the dishes, building up his courage for the conversation he needed to have. Mrs. Wilson, he began carefully, I've been thinking about what you told me this morning, about Lily's dreams. Martha's hands stilled in the soapy water. What about them? My daughter Emma disappeared 2 years ago when our car went off a bridge during a storm, Ethan said softly. She was trapped in her seatbelt as water filled the car. Those dreams Lily's having, they're exactly what happened to Emma that night. Martha dried her hands slowly on a dish towel, her expression unreadable. What are you suggesting? I think you know, Ethan replied gently. The timing matches. The physical resemblance is extraordinary. The scar is identical. And now these dreams. Martha, is there any possibility that Lily is actually Emma? The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. I found her by the river, Martha finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Soaked to the bone, half frozen, unconscious. I thought she would die before morning. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. When? 2 years ago, during the big storm. Martha's eyes filled with tears. She had no identification. When she woke, she couldn't remember anything. Not her name, not her family, nothing. I tried taking her to a hospital, but they wanted identification I didn't have. They said she'd be put in the system. So you kept her, Ethan said, no judgment in his voice. Martha nodded. I named her Lily after my daughter, Lily's mother, who passed away years ago. I told her she was my granddaughter, and eventually she accepted it as truth. I never meant to steal someone's child, Mr. Harrison. I truly believed she was lost to whoever had loved her before. I believe you, Ethan assured her, fighting his own emotions. You saved her life. You've cared for her when I couldn't. I can never repay that debt. Martha clutched the counter edge. What happens now? That depends, Ethan said carefully. If Lily is Emma, I would never separate you. You're as much her family now as I am. But I need to know the truth, for her sake as much as mine. How can we be certain? Martha asked. She doesn't remember her life before the accident. Memory can return, Ethan suggested. And there are other ways. DNA testing would be definitive. And if she is your daughter? Martha's voice trembled slightly. Will you take her away from me? No, Ethan promised firmly. Whatever happens, we find a way forward together. For Lily's sake. Their conversation was interrupted by a small sound from the hallway. They turned to find Lily standing in the doorway, her expression confused and frightened. Grandma? She said uncertainly. What's happening? Why are you crying? Martha quickly wiped her eyes. Nothing to worry about, dear. Ethan and I were just having an important grown-up talk. Lily looked between them skeptically. About me? I heard my name. Ethan and Martha exchanged glances, silently debating how much to reveal. Before either could speak, Lily's eyes suddenly went wide, fixed on something behind them. Ethan turned to follow her gaze. On the refrigerator was a calendar with the date circled, September 18th, marked Science Fair. Below it was a small photo of Lily and Martha, taken at the park the previous weekend. But Lily wasn't looking at either of these. She was staring at a small magnet holding up a shopping list, a souvenir from the Seattle Space Needle with the city skyline at night. "I've been there," she whispered, approaching slowly. "At night, with the lights all around. Someone was holding my hand. Someone." "Tom." She turned to Ethan, her expression bewildered. "Why do I remember that?" Ethan's heart seemed to stop at Lily's words. The Space Needle visit had been their last family outing before the accident, Emma's 8th birthday celebration, just 2 weeks before the bridge collapse. "You remember the Space Needle?" he asked carefully, trying to keep his voice neutral despite the hope surging through him. Lily frowned, touching the magnet with hesitant fingers. "I think so. It was nighttime. Everything was sparkling. I could see boats on the water." Her forehead creased with the effort of recollection. "Someone bought me ice cream with chocolate sprinkles." "What else do you remember, Lily?" Martha asked gently, moving to stand beside her. The girl shook her head, frustrated. "It's like trying to remember a dream. The pieces don't fit together." She looked up at Ethan. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Ethan realized he'd been staring and quickly softened his expression. "I'm sorry. It's just, I took my daughter Emma to the Space Needle for her 8th birthday. We had ice cream with chocolate sprinkles while we watched the boats in the harbor." Lily's eyes widened. "Is that why you think I might be her?" "Because I remember the Space Needle." The directness of the question caught both adults off guard. Martha recovered first, pulling out a chair for Lily at the kitchen table. "Why don't we all sit down? I think it's time we had an honest conversation." With remarkable composure, Martha explained how she had found Lily by the riverbank 2 years ago, cold, injured, and with no memory of who she was or how she got there. "I tried to find out who you belonged to," Martha told her, holding the girl's hands. "But you couldn't remember your name or where you lived. And I was afraid if I turned you over to the authorities, they would put you in foster care. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you after my own daughter. Your mother, as I told you, had passed away." "So you're not really my grandmother?" Lily asked, her voice small. Martha's eyes filled with tears. "In every way that matters, I am. Love makes family, not just blood. But no, I am not your biological grandmother." Lily turned to Ethan, her expression a mixture of confusion and dawning comprehension. "And you think I'm your daughter? The one who was lost in the river?" "I believe it's possible," Ethan said gently. "The timing matches. You look exactly like her, down to the crescent-shaped scar by your temple. And now you're remembering things that Emma experienced." "But I'm Lily," she insisted, a note of panic entering her voice. "That's who I am. You're still you," Martha assured her quickly. "Whatever your name was before, whatever memories you may recover, nothing changes who you are inside." Ethan nodded agreement. "Your identity isn't erased by learning about your past. It just becomes more complete." Lily sat silently for a long moment, processing this revelation. "If I'm your daughter," she finally asked Ethan, "what happens to Grandma Martha?" "I won't leave her." The fierce loyalty in her declaration brought a fresh wave of emotion to Martha's face. Ethan reached across the table, including them both in his response. "If you are Emma, nothing would change about your relationship with Martha," he promised. "She saved your life. She's cared for you when I couldn't. She is your family now, just as much as I would be. We would find a way to be a family together," Martha added, squeezing Lily's hand. "All of us?" Lily considered this, her young mind working through the implications. Could we find out for sure if I'm really Emma? There are tests we could do," Ethan explained. "A simple DNA test would tell us definitively, but only if you want to know. This has to be your decision, Lily." She nodded slowly. "I think I do want to know, but..." She hesitated, looking anxiously at Martha. "What if I start remembering my old life and forget everything with Grandma Martha? I don't want to forget her." Martha pulled her into a tight embrace. "Oh, my darling. Memory doesn't work that way. Remembering your past won't erase the years we've had together. I promise." "Could we go to your house?" Lily asked Ethan suddenly. Maybe seeing it would help me remember more things. Ethan exchanged glances with Martha, who gave a small nod of approval. Of course. We could go tomorrow after school if that works for both of you. Later that evening, after Lily had finally fallen asleep, Ethan and Martha sat in the small living room, speaking in hushed tones. She's taking it remarkably well, Ethan observed. Better than many adults would. Children are resilient, Martha replied. And Lily, or Emma, has always had an old soul. Sometimes I forget she's only 10. Ethan nodded, remembering how people had said similar things about Emma. Martha, I want to be completely transparent with you about what happens next. Legally speaking, Martha tensed visibly. Are you planning to take legal action against me? Absolutely not, Ethan assured her quickly. You saved her life. Everything you've done has been in her best interest. What I meant was, if the DNA test confirms she's Emma, we'll need to legally resurrect her. She's currently listed as presumed deceased. There will be paperwork, possibly court appearances. I want you to know that throughout that process, I'll ensure your relationship with her is legally protected. Martha's shoulders relaxed slightly. I appreciate that. I've lived in fear for 2 years that someone would take her away from me. She hesitated, then added, I did try to find her family, you know. In those first few weeks, I checked missing children reports at the library computers. But there were so many, and without knowing her real name or where she came from. You did what you thought was right, Ethan said sincerely. And you've given her a stable, loving home despite incredibly difficult circumstances. I could never fault you for that. The next afternoon, Ethan's sleek Tesla pulled up the long driveway to the sprawling contemporary home overlooking Lake Washington. Through the rearview mirror, he watched Lily's eyes widen as the house came into view. Glass and cedar nestled among towering evergreens, with the lake shimmering beyond. You live here? She breathed, pressing her face to the window. It's just a house, Ethan said, suddenly self-conscious about the property's obvious luxury. A bit too big for one person, honestly. Martha said nothing, but her expression as they entered the soaring foyer spoke volumes about the vast disparity between Ethan's world and the one she and Lily had inhabited beneath the Fremont Bridge.
No.
Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper, greeted them warmly, clearly having been briefed by Ethan beforehand. She showed no surprise at the guests, instead offering refreshments with practiced hospitality. Would you like a tour? Ethan asked, addressing Lily but including Martha with his glance. Lily nodded, her expression a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. As they moved through the main living areas, the great room with its wall of windows overlooking the lake, the chef's kitchen, where Ethan admitted he rarely cooked, the media room with its massive screen, Lily showed interest but no recognition. It wasn't until they reached the second floor that her demeanor changed. As they approached a door at the end of the hallway, Lily suddenly stopped, her hand flying to her temple where the crescent scar marked her skin. What is it? Martha asked, concerned. I don't know, Lily whispered. Something about this hallway feels familiar. Ethan's pulse quickened. This was Emma's room, he said, gesturing to the door. Would you like to see it? Lily nodded, and Ethan pushed the door open to reveal the bedroom preserved exactly as Emma had left it. Sky blue walls adorned with glow-in-the-dark stars, bookshelves filled with astronomy books and science kits, a telescope by the window pointing toward the lake. Lily entered slowly, her eyes sweeping across the room as if searching for something. Martha and Ethan remained in the doorway, watching as she moved to the bookshelf and ran her fingers along the spines of the books. She paused at a worn copy of The Little Prince, pulling it from the shelf and opening it to the title page. To my stargazer, Emma, she read aloud from the inscription. May you always find your way by the stars. Love, Daddy. She looked up at Ethan. You wrote this. It wasn't a question, and Ethan found himself unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He simply nodded. Lily replaced the book carefully and moved to the bed, where a collection of stuffed animals was arranged against the pillows. Without hesitation, she reached for a well-worn teddy bear wearing a tiny NASA t-shirt. Cosmo, she said softly, staring at the bear. Then, with a suddenness that made both adults start, she turned to Ethan. You gave him to me when I had my tonsils out. You said he'd been to space and back, so he knew all about being brave. Ethan's legs nearly gave way. It was true. He had invented an elaborate story about Cosmo the astronaut bear when 5-year-old Emma had been terrified about her tonsillectomy. That's right. He managed, his voice barely audible. You remember that? Lily clutched the bear, looking bewildered. I don't know how I remember. It just appeared in my head when I touched him. Martha moved to her side, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. Are you all right, dear? This must be overwhelming. Lily nodded, but her expression remained troubled. It's scary. Like there are two different people in my head. Lily and Emma, but they're both me. She looked up at Ethan. What do I call you now if I'm your daughter? Whatever feels right to you, Ethan assured her quickly. There's no rush to figure everything out at once. Lily's attention was caught by a small desk in the corner, where a photo album lay closed. She crossed to it and opened the cover, revealing pages of carefully preserved photographs. Emma as a baby, as a toddler at the beach, as a young girl on her first day of school. Mom, she whispered suddenly, touching a photo of a beautiful dark-haired woman holding a younger Emma on her lap. Where is she? The innocent question sent a jolt of pain through Ethan. She's no longer with us, he said gently. She became very ill when you were 5. That's why it was just you and me when the accident happened. Lily traced the woman's face in the photograph. I remember her perfume, she said distantly, like flowers and vanilla. Martha wiped tears from her eyes, watching the child she'd raised begin to reclaim fragments of a past life. She's remembering, Ethan, she said softly. She's really your Emma. Ethan nodded, unable to trust his voice. The evidence was becoming undeniable. Not just the physical resemblance, but these specific, personal memories that no one could have coached her to recall. Lily continued turning pages in the album, occasionally pausing at a photo that triggered a memory. Birthday parties, family vacations, ordinary moments that had been lost to her for 2 years. Suddenly, she stopped at a picture of herself at what appeared to be an amusement park, wearing a silver star pendant necklace and standing beside a Ferris wheel. My necklace, she said, touching the image. The star necklace you gave me for my 7th birthday. We were at the fair. The Ferris wheel got stuck and I was scared, but you told me stories until it started moving again. She looked up at Ethan, her eyes questioning. What happened to it? Ethan crossed to a painting on the wall, a landscape of Mount Rainier at sunset. He swung it aside to reveal a wall safe, which he opened with a practiced sequence of numbers. From inside, he withdrew a small velvet box and brought it to Lily. It was recovered from the car after the accident, he explained as he opened the box to reveal the silver star pendant, its chain broken. The clasp must have come undone in the water. Lily stared at the necklace, her fingers hovering over it but not quite touching, as if afraid it might dissolve into mist. I remember wearing this, she said softly, all the time. I never took it off. She looked up at Martha. Did I have it when you found me? Martha shook her head. No, sweetheart. You had nothing but the clothes you were wearing, and those were soaked through. A heavy silence filled the room as the reality of what had happened, and what had nearly happened, sank in. Ethan carefully closed the box and placed it on the desk beside the photo album. There's no rush, he said gently. Your memories are returning naturally. We'll take this at whatever pace feels comfortable for you. Lily nodded, but her expression had become troubled again. If I'm Emma, she said slowly, does that mean Lily wasn't real? That my whole life with Grandma Martha has been pretend? Not at all, Ethan said firmly, kneeling to meet her at eye level. The past 2 years with Martha have been completely real. The love between you is real. The experiences you've shared are real. Finding out that you had a life before doesn't invalidate anything that came after. Ethan's right, Martha added, joining them. You are who you are today because of all your experiences, both the ones you remember and the ones you don't. Emma or Lily, you're still the same wonderful girl I've loved since the moment I found you. Seattle Central Medical Center's laboratory was a sterile maze of white corridors and glass doors. Lily or Emma, the name she was gradually accepting as part of her identity, clutched Martha's hand as they followed the technician to a small examination room. Ethan walked beside them, his presence both reassuring and nerve-wracking. The DNA test is very simple, Dr. Kaplan explained, addressing Lily directly, rather than talking over her head to the adults. I'll just swab the inside of your cheek and then do the same for Mr. Harrison. It doesn't hurt at all. Lily nodded bravely, though her grip on Martha's hand tightened. "And this will tell us for sure if I'm really Emma?" "Yes," the doctor confirmed. "The results will be conclusive. We should have them within 48 hours. As they left the hospital, Lily grew quiet, staring out the car window as Seattle's familiar landscape passed by. Martha noticed her withdrawal first. "Are you all right, sweetheart? You've been very brave today." Lily shrugged, still looking out the window. "What if the test says I'm not Emma? What happens then?" The question hung in the air, addressing a possibility none of them had fully discussed. Ethan met Martha's eyes briefly in the rearview mirror before responding. "If you're not Emma," he said carefully, "then nothing changes about our arrangement. You and Martha would still have the apartment, your school enrollment, everything we've set up. My commitment to helping you both isn't conditional on you being my daughter. But you wouldn't want to spend time with us anymore," Lily said with a child's blunt perception. "You'd be sad and you'd go away." Ethan pulled the car over, turning to face her directly. "Lily, listen to me. Yes, I would be disappointed. I won't pretend otherwise. But in these past weeks, I've come to care about you and Martha, regardless of whether you're biologically connected to me. You saved my life. You brought light back into my world when it had gone dark. That doesn't change no matter what the test results say." Lily studied his face, seeming to measure the truthfulness of his words. Finally, she nodded, apparently satisfied. "Okay, but I think I am Emma. I keep remembering more things about the house and about you." Back at the Ballard apartment, Martha prepared lunch while Ethan received an unexpected call from Detective Brennan. "We've got him," Brennan said without preamble. Mercer rolled on Caldwell. "Gave us everything. The planning, execution, even recordings of their conversations discussing the kidnapping. Caldwell was arrested an hour ago at the Harrison Tech offices." Ethan absorbed this news with surprising calmness. "What happens now?" "He's being processed. Arraignment tomorrow morning. With Mercer's testimony and evidence, we're looking at multiple felony charges. Conspiracy, kidnapping, attempted murder. He's facing 20 years minimum." "Thank you, Detective," Ethan said sincerely, "for everything." After ending the call, he shared the news with Martha, deliberately keeping his voice low so Lily wouldn't overhear from her bedroom. "That's wonderful news," Martha said, relief evident in her voice. "You must feel safer knowing he's behind bars." "I do," Ethan admitted, "though strangely it feels almost secondary now." He glanced toward Lily's room. Finding her, whether she's Emma or not, has put things in perspective. The company, the money, even bringing Robert to justice. None of it matters compared to this. Martha smiled, a knowing expression on her lined face. "That's parenthood for you. Nothing else ever quite measures up to the importance of your child." That evening, Martin arrived at the apartment with a thick folder of legal documents. While Lily worked on homework in her room, the three adults gathered at the dining table to discuss next steps. "Assuming the DNA test confirms what we all now believe," Martin began, "we'll need to petition the court to legally resurrect Emma Harrison. It's a complex process, but I've prepared the groundwork." He slid several documents toward Ethan. "What does that mean for Martha?" Ethan asked, the question that had been foremost in his mind. Martin turned to Martha with professional courtesy. "Mrs. Wilson, you've raised Lily, Emma, for the past 2 years under extraordinary circumstances. While technically this could be construed as kidnapping," Martha finished for him, her voice steady despite the fear visible in her eyes. "No," Ethan said firmly. "Martha found an injured child with no identification or memory. She sought medical attention, checked missing persons reports, and provided care when the system might have failed her. There was no criminal intent." Martin nodded. "That's precisely how we'll frame it, and I believe any reasonable judge would agree. The goal here is to establish legal guardianship that acknowledges both of your roles." He produced another document. "This is a draft agreement for joint custody. Ethan would have primary physical custody as Emma's biological parent, but Martha would have established visitation rights and remain a legal guardian." Martha studied the document, emotions playing across her face. "This is more generous than I expected." "It's what's best for her," Ethan said simply. "She loves you, Martha. Separating you would only cause her pain. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "my house is certainly big enough for both of you if you'd consider moving in." "The commute from Ballard to Emma's school is becoming challenging." Martha looked up sharply. Move into your house? Are you serious? Completely. The east wing has a separate entrance and its own small kitchen. You'd have privacy and independence, but be close enough that Emma wouldn't have to choose between homes. Before Martha could respond, Ethan's phone rang. Detective Brennan again. Harrison, he answered, listening intently to the detective's urgent tone. His expression darkened. When, are you certain? Yes, I understand. We'll be careful. He ended the call, his face grave. Robert made bail. His company attorneys pulled strings with a sympathetic judge. He's out with orders to surrender his passport and wear an ankle monitor. But he's still a threat, Martin said, reading Ethan's expression. Brennan thinks so. He's arranging police protection, but it won't be in place until morning. Ethan glanced toward Lily's room. I don't want to frighten her, but we should be cautious. Martha rose immediately. I'll get her things packed. We should stay at your house tonight. It has security systems, I assume. Ethan nodded, grateful for her practical response. State of the art. I'll call Mrs. Winters to prepare rooms for you both. Within an hour, they had explained to Lily, in carefully chosen words that emphasized caution without causing panic, that they would be staying at Ethan's house for a few days. The girl accepted this with surprising equanimity. Excited at the prospect of spending more time in the room she was increasingly remembering as her own. As they drove through the darkening Seattle streets, Ethan's thoughts turned to Robert Caldwell. They had been friends once before money and power corrupted their relationship. The betrayal still stung, but oddly Ethan found it difficult to summon the rage he'd felt immediately after the kidnapping. His perspective had shifted so dramatically since finding Lily. At the house, Mrs. Winters had prepared guest quarters for Martha and turned down the bed in Emma's room for Lily. After settling in, they gathered in the kitchen where the housekeeper had left a simple dinner warming in the oven. Midway through the meal, the security system chimed, indicating the front gate had been activated. Ethan tensed, checking his phone to see the security camera feed. Relief washed through him at the sight of Detective Brennan's unmarked police car. It's the detective, he assured Martha and Lily, rising to disable the alarm. He probably wants to update us on the security arrangements. Brennan entered looking harried, nodding greetings to Martha and Lily before pulling Ethan aside. Caldwell's ankle monitor went dark 20 minutes ago, he said without preamble. He cut it off. We have units searching, but I wanted to warn you personally. Ethan glanced toward the kitchen where Lily sat finishing her dinner, oblivious to the potential danger. Should we leave? Go somewhere he wouldn't think to look? Brennan shook his head. This place is a fortress compared to most locations. I've got 2 officers stationed at your gate, and another patrol car circling the perimeter. Just stay inside, keep the security system armed, and call immediately if you notice anything suspicious. After Brennan left, Ethan joined Martha in helping Lily prepare for bed. The girl seemed to intuitively understand the gravity of the situation, despite their careful wording. And she was subdued as Martha helped her into pajamas that had been stored in the dresser for 2 years. Will you play the piano? Lily asked Ethan suddenly as he was about to leave the room. I remembered something today. You used to play a special song when I couldn't sleep. Ethan paused in the doorway, emotion tightening his throat. You remember that? Lily nodded, climbing into the bed that had waited so long for her return. It was quiet and slow, and you made it just for me. You called it Emma's Starlight. Martha watched from beside the bed as Ethan struggled to compose himself. I haven't played in 2 years, he admitted. Not since... Please? Lily asked, her eyes wide and hopeful. Unable to refuse, Ethan led them to the living room where a grand piano sat near the wall of windows overlooking the lake. Moonlight streamed through the glass, illuminating the instrument that had been silent since the night Emma disappeared. Hesitantly, he lifted the cover and sat on the bench, his fingers hovering over the keys. For a moment, he feared he'd forgotten how to play, that this piece of himself had been lost along with his daughter. Then slowly his hands found the familiar pattern, and the gentle melody of the lullaby he'd composed for Emma's 5th birthday filled the room. Lily closed her eyes, a peaceful expression settling over her features as the music washed over her. Martha watched them both, tears trailing silently down her weathered cheeks. When the last notes faded, Lily opened her eyes. I remember now, she said softly. You played that every night before bed, and then you'd say, sweet dreams, my little stargazer. Ethan nodded, unable to speak.
Familia de fiesta,
It had been their
Mickey
nightly ritual, one he'd never shared with anyone outside the family. Later, after Lily had fallen asleep in her childhood bed, Ethan and Martha sat in the kitchen, both too wired to sleep, despite the emotional exhaustion of the day. She's remembering more and more, Martha observed, cradling a cup of tea. Soon she'll have all of Emma's memories back. Does that worry you? Ethan asked gently. Martha considered the question. Less than I thought it would, she admitted. Seeing her face light up with recognition, it's like watching her become more whole. I can't begrudge her that, even if it means she remembers a life that didn't include me. It will always include you now, Ethan assured her. You're as much a part of her story as I am. Their conversation was interrupted by the harsh sound of the security alarm. Ethan jumped to his feet, checking his phone to see which zone had been breached. The lakeside perimeter sensor was flashing red. Stay here, he instructed Martha, already moving toward the alarm panel to investigate. I'll check the cameras. Before he could reach the security system, the power went out, plunging the house into darkness. Emergency lights activated moments later, casting an eerie glow through the hallways. He cut the power, Ethan realized aloud. The backup generator should kick in soon, but the security system will be on emergency mode only. Martha stood, her expression resolute rather than frightened. I'll get Lily, we should stay together. As she hurried toward Emma's bedroom, Ethan pulled out his phone to call Brennan, only to find no signal. The landline was equally dead when he checked. Cell jammer, he muttered, a cold certainty settling over him. Robert had planned this carefully, using his technical knowledge of Harrison Tech's security systems against his former partner. Martha returned with a sleepy Lily, who clutched Cosmo the bear tightly against her chest. The security officers at the gate? Martha asked. Ethan shook his head. I can't reach them. We need to assume they've been neutralized somehow. We should... The sound of breaking glass from the solarium interrupted him. Someone was inside the house. Without hesitation, Ethan ushered Martha and Lily toward his home office. The one room with reinforced walls and a door that could be secured with a mechanical lock rather than an electronic one. In here, he whispered, pushing them inside. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me or the police. Where are you going? Martha demanded, clutching Lily protectively. To stop Robert before he reaches this part of the house, Ethan replied grimly. Lock the door, Martha. Keep her safe. As the heavy door closed behind him, Ethan moved silently through the darkened hallways of his home. He had no weapon, but he had the advantage of knowing every inch of the house. Robert, despite having visited many times, would be less familiar with the layout, especially in darkness. From the direction of the great room came the sound of movement, the scrape of furniture, the creak of a floorboard. Ethan positioned himself in the shadows of the dining room, waiting as the footsteps grew closer. I know you're here, Ethan, Robert's voice called, unnaturally calm. You've made quite a mess of everything, Uncle. The sale to Globotech was nearly complete. We would all have been rich beyond imagination. We were already rich, Robert, Ethan replied, deliberately projecting his voice to draw his former partner away from the office where Lily and Martha were hidden. What happened to you? We built Harrison Tech to change the world, not to sell out to the highest bidder. Robert's laugh echoed through the darkened house. Always the idealist. That's why you could never see the bigger picture. Some of us want more than just enough. The footsteps changed direction, moving toward Ethan's voice. He slipped quietly around the massive dining table, keeping it between himself and the approaching threat. Is that why you tried to have me killed? Ethan asked, edging toward the kitchen. For money, not killed, Robert corrected, his voice closer now. Just persuaded. Mercer was supposed to scare you into signing the papers. Things got out of hand. Out of hand? Ethan repeated, incredulity sharpening his voice as he continued circling the dining table. You left me to die in the trunk of an abandoned car. In the dim emergency lighting, he caught a glimpse of Robert's silhouette, once his trusted friend and business partner, now a desperate man cornered by his own actions. The transformation was jarring. You weren't supposed to be harmed, Robert insisted, his voice strained. Just convinced. The company's future was at stake. Our future. And now your future involves a prison cell, Ethan replied, moving toward the kitchen, where he knew the landline had a separate power source from the main house. If he could reach it, he could call for help. Robert's laugh held a bitter edge. You think I'm going to prison? No, Ethan. I'm leaving the country tonight. Arrangements have been made. But first, I need those recordings Mercer claims to have given the police. I don't have them, Ethan said truthfully, inching closer to the kitchen doorway. The police do. I don't believe you, Robert snapped, his composure cracking. You've always kept backups of everything. You have copies. I need them. And I need you to call the district attorney and recant your testimony. The absurdity of the demand might have been laughable in other circumstances. That's not going to happen, Robert. It's over. The best thing you can do now is turn yourself in. Your sentence will be lighter if you cooperate. Always so righteous, Robert sneered, moving suddenly around the table toward Ethan's voice. Always thinking you know what's best for everyone. Ethan ducked into the kitchen, fumbling in the darkness for the landline. His fingers closed around the receiver just as Robert entered behind him. Put it down, Ethan, Robert ordered, his voice deadly quiet. I didn't want it to come to this, but you're not leaving me any choice. The dim emergency lights revealed what Ethan had feared. Robert was holding a gun, its metal surface gleaming dully as he aimed it toward his former friend. Think about what you're doing, Ethan said calmly, setting the receiver down. Kidnapping was bad enough. Don't add to the charges. There won't be any charges if there's no witness, Robert replied, gesturing with the gun for Ethan to move away from the phone. I've lost everything because of your stubbornness. My reputation, my future, my freedom. I have nothing left to lose. Ethan raised his hands slowly, mind racing for a way to defuse the situation. That's not true, Robert. You still have choices. This doesn't have to end with more violence. As Robert opened his mouth to respond, the unmistakable sound of a child's voice came from down the hallway. Ethan, are you okay? Lily's voice, high and frightened, cut through the tense standoff. Both men froze, Robert's expression shifting from determination to confusion. Who is that? He demanded. I thought you lived alone. Before Ethan could answer, Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, her small figure silhouetted against the emergency lights. She clutched Cosmo the bear in one hand, her wide eyes taking in the scene before her. Ethan with his hands raised, Robert pointing a gun. Lily, go back to Martha, Ethan urged, fear for her safety overwhelming everything else. Now, but Lily remained frozen in the doorway, staring not at Ethan but at Robert. I remember you, she said suddenly, her voice small but clear. You came to our house for my birthday party. You brought me a telescope. Robert's gun hand wavered slightly. What? I don't know what you're talking about, kid. Emma, Ethan corrected automatically, his protective instincts on high alert. Her name is Emma, my daughter. Your daughter is dead, Robert scoffed, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. She drowned 2 years ago. Everyone knows that. Lily, or Emma, as she was now fully reclaiming her identity, stepped further into the kitchen, apparently oblivious to the danger. You made a cake shaped like the solar system, she continued, her gaze never leaving Robert's face. And you told me stories about when you and my dad were in college together. You said he always wanted to save the world, and you always wanted to own it. Robert's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. The resemblance was unmistakable, especially in the set of her jaw and the distinctive scar by her temple. This is impossible, he whispered, the gun lowering slightly. You can't be Emma. But I am, she replied with a child's simple certainty. I got out of the car when it went into the river. The water carried me away. I forgot who I was until I found my dad in the junkyard. The story, condensed into those few sentences, sounded like a miracle, which Ethan realized it truly was. Martha appeared behind Emma, her face tight with fear. Come away, child, she urged, reaching for the girl's hand. Come back with me now. It's okay, Grandma Martha, Emma said calmly. He won't hurt us. He's my dad's friend. He's just scared. The innocent assessment struck something in Robert. His gun hand lowered completely, the fight visibly draining from him. He stared at the child with an expression of dawning horror, as if only now fully comprehending the magnitude of his actions and their potential consequences. Emma? He whispered, his voice cracking. It's really you? Before she could answer, the wail of police sirens cut through the night, growing rapidly closer. Moments later,
Dios,
flashing lights
bendito
illuminated the
seas.
lakeside windows as patrol cars surrounded the house. "Looks like Mrs. Winters got away and called the police," Ethan said, relief washing through him. "It's over,
Tengo que
Robert."
salir un poquito más rápido,
Robert seemed
tío.
not to
Estamos
hear,
con
his
miedo,
attention
tío,
still
con esto.
fixed on Emma. "I never meant for anyone to get
Estamos
hurt,"
con miedo, tío,
he said,
con este puto
almost to
coche,
himself.
tío.
"I just wanted what I thought I deserved.
Me cago en
And now
la
you'll face the
puta.
consequences," Ethan replied, not unkindly. "Put the gun down before the police come in. Don't make this worse than it already is." For a tense moment, it seemed Robert might resist. Then, with a defeated gesture, he placed the gun on the kitchen island and sank into a chair, his head in his hands. Minutes later, the house was swarming with police officers. Detective Brennan personally secured Robert in handcuffs, while uniformed officers checked the rest of the property. "Are you all right?" Brennan asked, his concerned gaze sweeping over Ethan, Martha, and the child who had been Lily, and was now reclaiming her identity as Emma. "We're okay," Ethan assured him, keeping a protective arm around Emma's shoulders. "Better than okay, actually." He looked down at his daughter with wonder that hadn't diminished in the slightest. "We're whole again." As Robert was led away, he paused before Ethan. "I truly am sorry," he said quietly. "For everything." Ethan nodded but offered no absolution. Some betrayals went too deep for easy forgiveness.
Dios, mira que
Instead,
por
he turned his
segunda nada
attention
vas a
back to
empezar,
Emma
tío.
and Martha, the family that had been forged through loss and found again through what could only be described as fate.
Es que salgo con miedo con el coche,
2
tío.
weeks later, they gathered in the chambers of Judge Eleanor Simmons, a compassionate woman with 3 decades of family court experience. The DNA results had confirmed what their hearts already knew. Lily was indeed Emma Harrison, returned from a watery grave by what the judge called an extraordinary confluence of circumstances and human resilience. The legal proceedings to resurrect Emma had been expedited, thanks to Martin's connections and the compelling nature of their case. Martha's role in Emma's survival had been recognized not as kidnapping,
¿Qué es eso?
but as an act of humanitarian rescue. And now they were finalizing the custody arrangement that would legally bind their unusual family together.
Joder.
"This is one of the most remarkable cases I've encountered in my career," Judge Simmons said, signing the final document with a flourish. "Emma Harrison is legally restored to life, with joint custody granted to her biological father, Ethan Harrison, and her legal guardian, Martha Wilson. Emma, dressed in a blue dress that matched her eyes, sat between Ethan and Martha, her small hand holding onto each of them. The past month had seen dramatic changes in her life, yet she had adapted with the resilience unique to children. More memories returned daily, some joyful, some painful, all part of reclaiming her complete identity. "Does this mean Grandma Martha is really my grandmother now?" she asked as they left the courthouse. "In every way that matters," Ethan assured her. "Legally, emotionally, permanently." Martha, who had moved into the east wing of the lake house as Ethan had suggested, smiled tearfully. "Family is more than blood, sweetheart. It's about love and commitment." The transformation of Ethan's house into a home had been remarkable. Martha's touch had softened the contemporary architecture with warmth and lived-in comfort. Emma's room, once a shrine to the past, was now a vibrant space for a living, growing child. Though Cosmo the astronaut bear still held pride of place on her bed. More profound was the transformation within Ethan himself. The driven, solitary businessman had been replaced by a father whose priorities had realigned completely. He had stepped back from day-to-day operations at Harrison Tech, appointing a new executive team to run the company, while he focused on what he now understood to be his most important job, being Emma's father. Robert Caldwell had pleaded guilty to all charges, accepting a 15-year sentence rather than facing trial. Ethan had visited him once in prison, not to offer forgiveness, but to achieve closure on a chapter of his life that had ended. The conversation had been brief and somber, both men acknowledging that the friendship they had once shared was beyond repair. As spring bloomed across Seattle, Ethan finalized his most ambitious project yet, the Emma Harrison Foundation, dedicated to supporting children in foster care and providing resources for families in crisis. Martha had agreed to serve as its director, bringing her experience as both a former teacher and someone who had cared for a child outside the system. "You have a gift for helping vulnerable children," Ethan told her, as they reviewed plans for the Foundation's first community center. You saved Emma when the system might have failed her. Think of how many others you can help now with proper resources behind you. One evening in early May, after Emma had gone to bed, Ethan found Martha sitting on the lakeside terrace, gazing at the stars beginning to appear in the twilight sky. She asked me something interesting today, Martha said as he joined her. She wanted to know if she could call herself Emma Lily Harrison Wilson. She said she wants to keep both her names and both her families. Ethan smiled, touched by his daughter's wisdom. What did you tell her? That I thought it was a wonderful idea, Martha replied, her eyes bright with unshed tears. That names are important, because they tell our stories, and her story is remarkable enough to need 2 names. And 2 parents, Ethan added gently. Martha nodded, accepting the compliment for what it was, recognition of her vital role in Emma's life, both past and present. The next weekend brought another milestone, Emma's 11th birthday, her first celebration with her complete family. The lakeside yard was decorated with twinkling lights and astronomy-themed decorations, a nod to her enduring love of stars. As friends from her new school arrived, Emma proudly introduced Martha to everyone as my grandmother who saved my life, and Ethan as my dad who never stopped looking for me. The simple descriptions brought tears to the eyes of the adults who understood the extraordinary journey behind those words. Late in the evening, after the guests had departed, Emma asked to visit the dock that extended into Lake Washington. Ethan and Martha accompanied her, watching as she gazed thoughtfully at the water that reflected the stars above. I'm not afraid of the water anymore, she announced suddenly. I remember everything now. The car going into the river, my seatbelt getting stuck, the water coming in. I was so scared, but then the window broke and I got pulled out by the current. Ethan and Martha exchanged concerned glances, hearing this complete recollection for the first time. It was cold and dark, and I couldn't see anything, Emma continued matter-of-factly, but I kept swimming up toward the light, the way you taught me, Dad. And then the river carried me so far, but Grandma Martha found me. She turned to look at them both, her expression serene despite the traumatic memories. It's like the universe made a perfect circle to bring us all together. From her pocket, she withdrew the silver star necklace, now repaired with a new chain. Can I wear it again? She asked her father. Wordlessly, Ethan fastened the necklace around her neck, the star pendant catching the moonlight as it settled against her chest. Welcome home, my little stargazer, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Martha placed her weathered hand on Emma's shoulder, completing their circle. Happy birthday, dear one. Your light never dimmed, even when we couldn't see it. In the months that followed, their unconventional families settled into rhythms that felt as natural as if they'd always been together. Martha's wisdom complemented Ethan's enthusiasm, creating a balanced foundation for Emma's continuing growth. The Emma Harrison Foundation opened its first family resource center in the fall, providing support to dozens of families in crisis. Martha thrived in her new role, her first-hand experience informing policies that prioritized keeping families together whenever possible. Ethan returned to music, playing the piano regularly again. Emma's Starlight remained a special favorite, but he composed new pieces as well, including Martha's Wisdom, a gentle, resilient melody that honored the woman who had become an unexpected but cherished part of their family. On the anniversary of Emma's rescue from the junkyard, they returned to Riverdale Salvage Yard together. Mr. Jenkins, surprised by their visit, bashfully accepted their donation to renovate the small office where he spent his days. This place will always be special to us, Ethan explained. It's where our family began to find each other again. As they prepared to leave, Emma paused near the spot where she had once found a stranger locked in a car trunk, a stranger who turned out to be the father she had forgotten. Do you ever think about how many things had to happen exactly right for us to find each other? She asked thoughtfully. If I hadn't been scavenging that exact day in that exact place, I think about it every day, Ethan admitted, placing a hand on her shoulder. Some might call it coincidence, Martha added, but I prefer to think of it as something more meaningful, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, hope persists. Like stars, Emma said, touching her necklace. Even when you can't see them, they're still there, shining. As they walked back to the car, hand in hand, their unlikely family bound by choice as much as circumstance, the Seattle fog began to lift. Sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the path before them. 3 lives that had been shattered by tragedy, now restored and reimagined into something new and precious. Behind them, the junkyard that had once held only broken, discarded things now stood as a testament to what could be salvaged and made whole again when found by the right hands, guided by love and illuminated by the unwavering light of hope. The broken star pendant, once lost to the river, now shone at Emma's throat, a symbol of resilience, of lives interrupted but not ended, of family defined not by blood alone, but by the choice to love and protect each other, no matter what waters might rise to separate them.